that work for everyone, or at least close to as everyone as we can get, then we have fewer needs for modifications. So concretely, a curb cut. That really works well for and is essential for a person in a wheelchair, right? But when I'm pushing a baby stroller, it's really, really frustrating when that curb cut doesn't line up with where the crosswalk is. So, or if you're pushing a suitcase to go to the metro. We all use this thing. It's designed for one population, but when done well, it now works for everyone, okay? So that's one way, and a field has sprung out of that called universal design learning, universal design and teaching. So the suggestions, and I have 3 of them for you, are really coming from that frame of mind, and I'm sure you can think of others. But the idea is that if you set up your course to be universally designed, if you think about a lot of these issues and what works for everyone, rather than the very few square pegs that we have for our square boxes, you will also be set up for success for handling all of these requests. Because believe me, when I'm on the phone with you, I feel for you. We're asking you to basically create independent studies for 4 of the 30 students in your course by the end of the semester, and it's a lot of work. So hopefully work on the front end will help with this. So one concrete idea. Set up your syllabus in a way that sets you up to be able to address issues that might come up in the semester. So put in the syllabus ways that you can be flexible and alternatives for assignments. I teach as an adjunct at GW, and an example of this that I use is if a student needs to miss class. I teach adult students. They need to miss class for all sorts of reasons. I have them write a reading reflection on the readings that we covered that night, and to talk to someone else in the class about their thoughts of what we discussed in class. And so they also have that human interaction on it, and I ask them to include that in the reflection to me. So I'm not saying, sure, miss class, no problem, but I'm also not necessarily needing them to tell me why they missed class. I'm not needing to get into those weeds. I've figured out an alternative that to me meets my learning outcomes. One that I've seen here that works quite well also is when it's an exam-based course, having 3 exams and the faculty member drops the lowest grade. So they don't need to know why the student is needing to drop that last grade. And so when we're on the phone with them saying the student is not going to be able to take this last exam, could we extend it? And they say, oh, well, I'm actually looking at my grade book and they've done quite well on the first 2 exams. So they could miss this 3rd exam, drop that one, and then take their final. So if you set up these systems in your syllabus ahead of time, you're just able to tell students about the options that are already available to them rather than having to come up with a whole other set of options at the last minute for a student. The next piece that is really helpful for students with disabilities, students with mental health concerns, but actually all students, and I know we're talking about this a lot anyway, is giving students early feedback and giving them often feedback. Lots of times when we're talking with faculty and they're saying, what should I do for this student? The best piece of advice I can give them is to give them a realistic assessment of where they're actually doing in your class so that they can make an educated determination on what they need to do. So by saying, don't worry, you'll be fine, it will all work out, that's the kindest thing to say, but it gives the student no data to make a decision on. So by saying, you know what, you've missed all of these things, I'm happy to work with you on extending the deadlines. I'm worried about your ability to finish these 3 things. So I think you should go and meet with your academic advisor and talk through what your options are for your courses. That's a harder conversation to have. It's much easier in the moment to say, don't worry, it will all work out. I'm sorry you're crying. Here's some tissues. That's easier in the moment, but it gives us, when then we're advising students, it gives us very little to go on to help them make thoughtful decisions. So if you can give them feedback, think about the deadlines. When's the withdrawal deadline? Make sure that students have good feedback ahead of time and so that they know how they're doing in your class so they can decide to withdraw from the class if they're going to need to by the deadline. And then also talk to them about problem-solving skills. So saying abstract things like, you can complete the work, or don't worry, we'll make it up. For a student who's really stressed out, that's so abstract and they actually don't know how that gets accomplished. But instead, if you can break it down with them and say, all right, you've missed these 3 Blackboard posts and you've missed this reflection that we did in class. Here's where I think your priority should be. When do you realistically think you can finish these things? So if you get in the weeds with them a little bit, and again, you're not having to talk to them about their mental health issues. So it doesn't mean that you have to engage as a counselor. We actually don't want that. But if you can engage with them on the academic side of this, of talking about what they actually have missed, it's really helpful. Oftentimes students will say to us, I'm failing the class, I've missed everything, I haven't gone in forever. Sometimes that's true. But about half the time when we talk to the faculty member and find out what they're missing, faculty member says, they're missing 2 Blackboard posts and they've missed 2 classes. If they can turn this around, they can make it. But the student is feeling this weight that they're so sunk that they don't know how to re-engage with you. So if you can talk to them about problem-solving skills, help them make the abstract more concrete, and giving them the feedback earlier, that's helpful. And then the last thing is to be clear about what your expectations are. And I do want to just underline that you are allowed to have expectations. So a mental health crisis, an accommodation letter from the Academic Support and Access Center does not mean this trump card of finish the